college? Are they coming, sorry, I just got a notification that we're being recorded, but we knew that. Why are they coming to college? Are they wanting to advance their career? Are they wanting to just finish what they started? Are they wanting to prove to their kids that they can do that? So if we know their why, we can help steer the conversation around the degree towards finishing that why.
And I would say one thing I just kind of want to add on that, and I'm kind of a sucker for giving out our example stories. Our hour and a half long conversation, returning student, Olivia and I were working with. This was kind of one of the early opportunities I had to see this happen as we kind of learned to discuss and talk and build rapport, kind of trying to figure out if this computer science, bachelor's degree, or if she should just get a bachelor's and jump into a master's. And she kept kind of asking us, well, how is just doing this bachelor's going to help me, right? With this, my work wants the computer science program. And we were just kind of trying to say, like, I think a faster route might be to get this and then jump into a master's program, which, is as beneficial. But again, to kind of move on from that one, commonly, do I need a foreign language? I'm sure a lot of you guys, academic advisors, have gotten this one.
So at UMSL, all of our Bachelor of Arts degrees require a foreign language. It's 3 courses in the language sequence. And a lot of our students are concerned because maybe it's a little bit scary to consider starting a foreign language at the age of 35. Or I took 2 years of Spanish, when I was 18 and 19, does that count? And thankfully our language program has come together with, they've realized that this is an issue as well. So our language department has specific language requirements for students who are over the age of 24 and taking online courses. So there's a whole little rubric, if this, then that, but, if a student does have 2 years of Spanish, from 10 years ago, we're not going to expect that they can test into Spanish 3 and need to take Spanish 3 to finish that language sequence. They will give them their credit for their 2 that they already started, and then we'll have them take 1 more course that's taught in English through the foreign language department about language and cultural studies or about language and society, to wrap up that language sequence and make sure that the student is getting from that requirement what we're hoping, but also to not make it a further roadblock.
Awesome, thank you. So in modality here, oftentimes what we hear, do you have evening online classes? I work a traditional 40-hour work week.
Absolutely. We have majors that are online completely in the evening. We don't restrict students, so they can take both. So even if a student takes 90% of their classes online, they might say, but I really am worried about math, so I want to take math in person. Fantastic. How about this evening math class? Or maybe a synchronous online class where you can feel like you have the instructor's ear a little bit better. Maybe that would be most appropriate for you. So we let students move in and out of that depending on what works best for their schedules, what works best for their learning style, and what they're most comfortable with.
Yeah, and to kind of build upon that one, again, we hear this one a lot for non-traditional students. I'd like to start as soon as possible because they may not know when the actual start times for like the more traditional terms are. But I heard this semester started a few weeks ago. What can I do?
So as many universities do, we have our traditional 16-week semester. Within that 16-week semester, we also have a first 8-week and a second 8-week semester. So, if a student contacts us today and says, I want to start as soon as possible, the answer is fantastic. Let's get you started next month. We've got a session that starts, in a little over a month, or a little less than a month. But then in the summer, we have a 12-week term, a first 8 weeks, a second 8 weeks, a 4-week, a 4-week, a 4-week. So there are a lot of different start times, and it helps the student get started as quickly as possible, it helps them get started as quickly as possible, but it also helps them to balance the number of courses that they're taking at once, and we'll follow up on that in just a little bit.
Yep. And again, I hear this a lot with students that are returning non-traditional. Can I do this degree online? Maybe they have kids at home and they just can't get away.
Absolutely. We are proud of how we do online courses. So a lot of universities are newer to the online world because we were all sort of forced to due to COVID. But we were doing online before that, and we were doing it well. UMSL's continuously ranked as having some of the best online bachelor's programs in the nation. And we're proud of that. And in fact, within the system, when we did have to switch to this weird COVID world, they called upon UMSL. How are you approving your online courses? What training do your instructors get? And we were happy to share that within the system.
Yep. And again, to build upon, maybe we mentioned this just briefly, but I can only really take 1 or 2 classes. Is that okay?
Yeah, so that goes back to the students thinking about what it means to do it the right way. Well, there is no right way. The right way is the best way for you. So if what works best for you is to take 1 or 2 classes, absolutely. Make sure that you talk with your academic advisor about that. We'll put you together in the best 1 or 2 class schedule at a time, and make it work. It's absolutely fine.
Yep. And we're going to move on to the general admission process here. Again, this is what we hear and how we kind of respond. So perhaps I submitted my application, says I still need my high school transcripts. It's been 20 years, Olivia. Do I need these?
You do still need to submit your high school transcript. If you're over the age of 24, we don't require test scores because it doesn't matter how you did on the ACT 20 years ago. But we do need to see that you at least graduated from high school. That doesn't mean that we're going to use that necessarily for admission, because I know I'm a different person now than I was 20 years ago, and I'm assuming that you are as well. So we just need to see that you graduated, and we'll move forward from there.
Awesome. In line with that, I wasn't really the best student when I went to college, true story, for the first time. Here's the next part. I joined the military, did 15. Are you going to use my GPA from that term back then?
Generally, no, honestly. Why it's important to build that rapport at the beginning, so that they know that you're a comfortable person to speak with about these things, and that we know that student is concerned about that. So if we didn't have that conversation, would the student be denied if we looked at their one semester from 15 years ago and they had a GPA that started with a 0? Yeah, probably. But if we know, but then, I joined the military, my life is completely in a whole other place, this is what I do now in a career, this is my motivation for returning to college at this point. Once we've had that conversation, that's the conversation that generally we have after the student appeals their denial and whatever. So let's have that up front. And then add those notes to the student's record, get those notes out to our director, let them know, this is a student that I want to fight for. And I don't fight for all of them, but I do fight for the ones that I feel like need to be fought for. So.
Yep. And to briefly touch, I did that exact scenario with student, 1 term, high school or college, 20 years in the military, 0.91 GPA. I fought for that student because he was a different person. So specific to UMSL and the system, I went to a different system school right out of high school, and my grades are not good. Is that an issue?
It could be an issue, absolutely. That for those of you who aren't familiar with the University of Missouri system. Students do have like an UMSL specific GPA, but they also have a UM system GPA, and that can follow them around. But we do have a grade modification policy within the system. So if a student took a course at UMKC and didn't do so well, and they took the equivalent course at UMSL, we can use their UMSL grade to replace the grade from UMKC. We also, this is more about transferring, but for returning students, we have academic renewal, which is a forgiveness program as well. So we want to talk through those options with students so that they know that isn't haunting them for always and forever. There are ways around it.
And I want to briefly touch, sometimes if those conversations really need to go in a different direction, we have been comfortable with explaining alternate routes. Obtaining an AA will automatically get you admission at UMSL. So another big question, time to completion. Again, here's kind of the typical questions that are going to be coming up a lot. How long is this going to take,
So we are in an interesting place in admissions in that we have academic advisors in our admissions office. So we have folks in our office who either have a history of being an academic advisor in other units here at UMSL, like myself in particular. I used to be the program advisor for criminology and criminal justice and for sociology, and then also for organizational leadership. And so what that means is we have people here in our office who can have these more in-depth conversations with a student about what the degree plan looks like, where, how are your courses transferring in, what are you still going to have remaining, how long is that going to take, and we don't have to send them out to the colleges to have those discussions. That can happen here in the admissions office, even while the student's still exploring what they want to do next, instead of waiting until it's time to register for classes to have that conversation, or trying to get onto an academic advisor's schedule in the middle of spring registration or whatever. We can have those conversations here in our office. So absolutely, walk a student through. I like to put together a whole academic map for a student who's been admitted. Like, these are the courses that you've taken, so this is what you have remaining. What do you want to do with them? This one has to come before this one has to be at the end. Other than that, one class at a time, 2 classes at a time, can you do 5? Whatever you want is going to be fine. And so let the student know that it's their decision and that there's nothing wrong with taking 1 class at a time. There's also nothing wrong with saying, I can quit my job and be a full-time student. That's fine too. Everything is fine. It's the student's decision.
Awesome. I need a degree within the next 18 months so I can apply for my manager's job when they retire. Can I do this? Is this possible?
There might be with transfer hours. Let's look at what programs you are closest to have already finishing. What's the quickest way? Let's figure that out for you. There's no right way. There's no way that, you should have done it, could have done it, would have done it. Let's figure out where you are now, and that's okay. And we'll move forward from there.
How can I speed things up?
So like I was explaining earlier about all the different terms that we have, we like to encourage our non-traditional students to take advantage of those terms. So maybe they might say, I can only take 2 classes at a time. Okay, you can only take 2 classes. What if you took a 16-week and then 2 8-weeks? Because then you get 3 classes out of the way this semester, but you're never in more than 2 at a time. And yeah, those 8 weeks are a little bit more accelerated, but still you're not juggling multiple due dates and, readings and all of that. But then, you could take classes in the summer as well. So take your spring, take your summer, take your fall, just keep going all the way through. And, if you need to take a break in the summer, that's fine also. Maybe you just want to take a 4-week break in the summer. Great, let's do a first 8-week term. You get your 4 weeks off, you start again in the fall. Just make sure the student knows that it really is about them. I absolutely have had conversations with students. Like I have a student who was a high school soccer coach, and he's trying to put together his schedule, and I said, okay, well, when are you in season? He was like, excuse me? I was like, well, when are you in season, right? Are you really going to be able to devote the same amount of time to school when you are, in season? He was like, I hadn't even really thought about that. So just like acknowledging that that student has another part to their life and that that part of their life is really important.
Awesome. So again, kind of moving on to one of our other bulletin points, financing a degree. We know this one is very, very important to any student really, but particularly so too for our non-traditional student population. How much will this cost? Are there a bunch of fees for these classes that I'm gonna have to pay?
Absolutely. That's the two biggest questions are, how long is it going to take me? How much is it going to cost me? A lot of times students are returning to college because they want to get to that next step in their career. They want to get that pay increase. They may not be in the most financially secure place at the moment. So money's hard, and you've got kids that have soccer, or you've got all the things that you need to balance. So we charge by the credit hour. A lot of schools charge by the credit hour, but there are also a lot of schools that charge a tuition rate. So we charge by the credit hour. So the student's paying for the courses that they're taking. And if they take a class that's taught through the College of Business, there's a certain fee. If it's taught through the College of Arts and Sciences, it's a different fee. But aside from that departmental fee that's attached to those credit hours, we don't have any other fees. There's no student ID fee or parking permit fee or, rec center fee. We don't have any of those. Those are all part of what you're paying for as a student. And so, particularly for our students who are taking classes online, the idea of paying for a parking fee when they're never planning to come to campus, or paying for the use of the rec center when they live an hour and a half away, that's not appealing to them. So we don't have those separate fees like that.
Can I get financial aid?
Yep, you absolutely can. So students who are enrolled in at least 6 hours each semester, there are a variety of loans and grants, and we even have a scholarship that is intended only for part-time students. The student has to be enrolled part-time, they have to be over the age of 24, and they have to have a good GPA coming in. But that's scholarship money that's for them, because we know that it's hard and we know that they struggle to pay for classes, and so we want to be able to help them. And also, like, ethically, it doesn't make sense to fund our university on the backs of these hardworking students, who are juggling life outside of school as well. Anybody who's familiar with how discounting policies work in higher ed, freshmen are have a significantly higher discount rate than transfer students, and definitely non-traditional students. And so we're trying to balance that a little bit more.
My employer says that he can help me pay, but will only pay me back after I finish the course.
We hear that all the time, and I'm sure that any of you who work with non-traditional students do as well. So what that means is that the student is expected to just front the money, because everybody just happens to have, $3,000 in their bank account that they can just throw out there to UMSL and wait for their employer to reimburse them. Clearly, that's not the case. So what we do is the students work with our cashier's office, and they work with their HR department, and they fill out some paperwork. And once all of that is appropriately filed, then we say, you know what, we're not going to bill you until after the semester, because we know your employer will pay at that point. So like a student taking a class in the fall, that bill's not due for them until February. So at that point, they finish the class, their grades are in, their employer has had a little bit of time to process it, and then hopefully the student has the money in their pocket and can pay. They do have to fill out those forms every semester, and there is a fee attached to that, but it's a breath of fresh air for our students who are concerned about how they can make that work. Sorry, one quick second. I had a student, I was describing that to her, and she was like, honestly, I don't even want my company to know that I don't have a degree. Like, I don't know how I got to the role that I'm in because I'm supposed to have a degree at this point, and I think that they just don't know, so I don't want to highlight it. And that's that, like, fear that a lot of our students come with. They feel like maybe they did something wrong, or they're hiding, they've got some big secret. So we just have to talk through that and normalize that. And I mean, clearly I can't make financial decisions for a student, but if she feels like she doesn't want to take advantage of employer reimbursement because she doesn't want to draw attention to the fact that she doesn't have a degree, then, I mean, that's her decision. But she needs to know that there is this other option if she doesn't really have the finances in place to do it.
Yeah, it's pretty, normal for these students to kind of really open up. And you tend to get that a lot, especially when you go out of your way to build those rapport. So why does all of this matter? In the city of St. Louis alone, almost 20% of adults over the age of 25 have some college, but no degree, and are not currently enrolled in college.
And so that's really hard for those students. They have taken on college debt in most cases, but they don't have that degree. So they don't have what comes along with a degree, the increased earning potential, the other job opportunities. They don't have that, but they're still paying on this debt.
Yep. I think it's been noted, a college degree, it can impact the family's economic stability, quality of life, and influences the chances the children in that family will also earn a college degree. That's those generational differences that will definitely make a difference to come.
And because 73% of UMSL students graduate and stay and work in the St. Louis region, we're making a difference for not just that student, not just that student's children, but for the entire community.
And
honestly, go ahead.
Okay. No, I just wanted to top off, I'm sure if anybody's familiar with UMSL, we are committed to transforming lives. And I think this presentation is one way we take that seriously.
Absolutely. I wanted to address Kim in the chat said at some point in the presentation, can you talk about if there are any options for someone with a lot of work experience to get college credit for that experience? There is. So we do credit for prior learning. I'm going to be honest, we don't do it as well as some other schools do. It's definitely a world that we're, as a university, committed to exploring our first ventures into that world. I mean, we do military credit, and we do military credit well. We're very proud of that. So if a student does have a joint service transcript, in general, students probably get 12 to 15 credit hours if they've gone through basic training and, leadership courses within their military service. So there's that part. But then the other part is we started in our organizational leadership degree, but within org leadership, if a student's an org leadership student, they can take a 1 credit hour prior learning portfolio course. And in that course, they target a certain number of classes that are part of that org leadership degree. And so maybe it's communication in the organization, or information systems, or leadership and management. So they say, you know what, I already know that, and I'm going to show you how. And so the students put together a portfolio. In that portfolio, they include like letters of recommendation from former supervisors. Here's a, training manual I put together for my new hires. Here's, they provide artifacts and evidence, and then they do a little write-up of how the artifacts and evidence meet the learning objectives for the courses that they're targeting. that portfolio is submitted to a committee, the committee reviews it, and the student can get credit for the courses that they've targeted. So we allow them to target up to 3 courses per time they do that per portfolio. So the student pays for 1 credit hour. If their portfolio is unsuccessful, they still earn that 1 credit hour, but that's it. If their portfolio is successful, they earn the 1 credit hour from the portfolio course, but they can also earn up to 9 credit hours for 3 courses that they targeted. And we don't charge them for those courses. So they pay for one, they enroll in one, pay for one, and they can earn up to 10 total. Let me
Question here. Our allied health programs tend to be attracted to non-traditional students, nursing, dental hygiene, mortuary science, rad tech, but they require students to be enrolled full-time. Otherwise, they will not admit them to the program. I believe that they're required to be full-time for accreditation purposes, but I could be mistaken, assuming that's correct. And we can't allow them to be part-time. Do you have any recommendations for ways to assist students, time, funding, et cetera, who must be enrolled full-time?
So absolutely, that's difficult, and that's something that students do face depending on the program that they're in. Honestly, what's the most helpful for students, and it's not something that you can make the change immediately, is those alternate schedules. So at UMSL, a student can take a winter intercession course that's 2 weeks long, and it counts towards their spring totals. They can take a spring 8-week course that counts towards their spring totals. So they could take, you know, a 16-week, an 8-week one, an 8-week two, and a winter intercession, and that's 12 credit hours. They're a full-time student, but they were never really in 4 classes at the same time. So for us, it's being dynamic and flexible with our course offerings. I know that some of those more technical heavy courses you may not be able to be that flexible. But that's one way that we explored to make it more feasible for students. Do you have anything else to add there, Zach?
I would only say, because we don't typically work in that area of like a very technical applied degree programs, but I think to somewhat address, you know, the full-time, part-time, as far as financial aid, we did introduce a scholarship, you know, so we are kind of trying to address some of those gaps as far as funding, but I think sometimes it can be very difficult when programs require a certain amount of hours in a term. That's a great question, and probably one that you know, you just gotta constantly hammer that home to your institutional leaders. So, but yeah.
Yeah, and you know, are those courses taught during the day? Because it's really hard for a student who has kids and needs health insurance and needs to pay rent and, you know, do all the adult type things to just say, well, I guess I got to quit my job because I need to be a full-time student. So are there courses that can be offered in the evening or in the weekend? Can we switch some courses to online to help students? Right, that's the problem we're up against. Exactly.
I'd say institutional research as well. Like, I know, Olivia, I think how many, you know, state initiative that we were like recently going through, Degreesmen Do, but that kind of helped us identify a ton of degrees that we could, you know, try to target people that had like a course left. You know, I think sometimes it's often overlooked as a solution to bring to leaders that say, we have a lot of interest here. We're missing out on credit hour production, which that is one way to get somebody's attention, credit hour production. You want to get somebody's head to kind of go, what? We're missing out on that. At some point, faculty members will try to find a way if it means credit hour production.
Yeah, I mean, I had the conversation with leadership of our university related to, so I'm constantly the one waving the adult, non-traditional, whatever you want to call it, banner. But about, you know, like I said, we charge by the credit hour. So it doesn't really matter how many heads we have, it's how many courses they're enrolled in. So if a student tells me I can only enroll in 2 courses at a time, or I can only, you know, I can only manage 2 courses at a time. Do you want them to just take 2 16-week courses because that's all we're going to offer them? Or do we want to give them the option of multiple 8 weeks, so they could take 2 8 weeks and another 2 8 weeks? And now we've got, you know, 12 credit hours out of that student that we were only going to get 6. So something to think about for sure. EIU has an IDS online, has an IDS online bachelor's degree that will evaluate life experience for college credit. Let me know if you'd like any information. Well, thank you. I super appreciate that. We are absolutely building. It's, you know, a lot of times it's a faculty decision about their departments. So we want to make sure that we have those conversations with faculty all along the way. But it's an area that UMSL has decided to be devoted to. So that's really good that we're having those conversations. And I know that there are places out there that do it well, and I would absolutely love to connect.
So everybody, just a kind of a, we have like 2 or 3 minutes left before we have to log off. So if there's any last, you know, questions for our presenters or thoughts that you had?
If people want to just unmute and chat, that's fine. Zach, do you want to stop sharing your screen so we can see each other?
Sorry, yeah, sorry about that.
No worries. Is there anyone who has any other questions out there? Oh yeah, shoot. We forgot to put our info on the slide.
You could drop your email into the chat box if you want so people can copy it out.
We just did.
Awesome.
So Zach put his, and then I'm askolivia@umsl.edu. Is there anything else?
Well, we want to thank you so much for presenting, you know, on this cold Friday morning for our Transfer Summit. You know, I think we all struggle with the best way to serve non-traditional students, but as you pointed out, they're a very important and sometimes overlooked systematically, you know, population of students. And so kudos to you for all the work that you're doing in that arena. That's great.
Thank you. I super appreciate it. And I wanted to comment, Abby said thank you for the pride flag. And so I wanted to say too that that's another way that I feel like I can help connect with students. I've got my pride flag. I got a whole bunch of toys up on my shelf. I've got pictures of my kids. Like, that's a way that I show that I'm a person and that I'm a person that's accepting of other people. So
yeah, awesome.
I don't even have to say it. Anyway, thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
And,
have a great day. And yes, we hope to see everybody in coming sessions.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.